Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. It's our symposium, Qualitative Research on Language Learning Strategies and Sources of Regulation. And this presentation is called Towards a Better Understanding of the Dynamics of Strategy Instruction Results from a Qualitative Study. I'm Isobel Wang from Moray House School of Education, the University of Edinburgh. And this is my colleague, Andrew Cohen, and Professor Emeritus from the University of Minnesota. So the focus of our talk is to provide fresh insights from research about strategy instruction with a particular focus on one skill area. It's a vocabulary, and also to report on a study we recently conducted showing how verbal reports were used to help researchers find out how learners actually process strategy instruction, especially the macro level interactions between the providers and the recipients of strategy instruction.
Okay, and what has research told us about all this? Well, fortunately, we have the kinds of meta-analyses done by Luke Plonsky and colleagues, and I cite or recite a talk that Luke Plonsky gave in 2019, and the reference takes you right to his PowerPoint so that you can deal with those slides and see what he had to say. But it was about the cause and effect relationship between strategy instruction, intervention, and learning outcomes. And he found, the research has shown that yes, there are some significant effects. It's usually an experimental setting where one group gets strategy enhancement treatment and the other doesn't. The macro level results suggest that strategy instruction improves language development. In our case, looking at vocabulary, yes, there's vocabulary development. The tests tend to be non-task based, using measures that, yes, indicate there's some gain, but it's not macro, it's micro level research. So we're left with the question, what is the impact of strategy instruction on comprehension and production of vocabulary use at the micro level in real life situations?
Yeah, so Andrew just mentioned one of the area, and another emphasis in literature appears to be the effect of strategy instruction on strategy use in terms of the frequency and range of strategy use. This is often measured by self-report questionnaires. When responding such self-report questionnaires, however, learners may respond inaccurately because they tend to be based on their own beliefs about their strategy use. Such studies also have little to offer how learners actually strategize in the process of language learning in terms of the complexity and also the dynamics of their strategy use. For example, to what extent and in what ways do learners select and combine strategies in relation to the specific context of teaching and learning? To what extent the function of a given strategy fluctuates, and what is the relationship of strategy use and learners, their learning style preferences, and also their contextual factors?
Yeah, so this is very brief, of course, given the amount of time we have, but the takeaway could be from this review of literature that we need to promote micro level studies of how learners actually process and engage in strategy instruction, because we're lacking that information from the results that are out there in the field.
So I'd like to run through a study we want to tell you about, focusing on strategy instruction from the providers and the recipients' perspective. I will start with the aims of the study, and my colleague Andrew will continue to talk about our research design. So the aims of this study were to understand the strategies that each participant used in the role of both provider and recipient, and to explore how individual differences helped to explain each participant's strategy, their strategy choices. So how individual differences play a role in their own choice of strategies. Also to determine the extent to which the participants benefited from assuming both roles, the role of both provider and recipient.
So our research design, we had 12 participants in dyads, so 6 dyads, one each taking the role of both provider and recipient. 11 Chinese and 1 Japanese. They were all doing a master's level degree in the teaching of English as a second language in a master's program at a British university. What was the intervention? Each participant assumed the roles, as I said, of both the provider and recipient, and we think that that is, in fact, innovative. It's something that we haven't seen it in the research literature. So you get to look at both sides. The provider made use of strategy instruction materials that we specially designed to assist the recipient in fine-tuning one area, fine-tuning vocabulary for academic writing on a one-to-one basis. We've seen that advanced learners of English can really struggle over, wait a minute, is this the right word to use to write with in this context? The materials development was informed by previous research, and we give 4 of our studies that dealt with this. When in the role of provider, participants were encouraged to cater their strategy instruction according to the recipient's needs, and these needs were communicated to the provider in written form 2 days earlier, before the session. The materials contain 4 main sections. There were first online resources for checking word meanings and instances of their use. There was modeling of strategy use in scenarios. There were explanations of strategy functions. Remember, this is beyond the label, like a metacognitive strategy, but what is the actual function of that strategy in a given moment? And guidelines for strategy use consistent with the style preferences of the provider and recipient, since a lot of times the choice of strategies is paired with the style preference of the individual. They're operating within their comfort zone of styles that are consistent with their strategy preferences, going both ways. Okay, continuing on with the research design, instrumentation. We had a questionnaire to get at participants' background information, previous experience with vocabulary strategies, and also attitudes towards strategy instruction. Then they all took a learning style survey that is self-scored to give them, both in the provider and recipient roles, and the researchers, a sense of the participants' style preferences for learning English. We have seen in our previous research, this does make a difference. Verbal report data were then collected from the participants to investigate their involvement. And these data are rich, and we think that they're crucial to try to understand better what's going on in the mind. First, there's self-revelational data, which are stream of consciousness data on strategic behavior within 20 seconds of the mental activity. They're unanalyzed. The literature refers to them as think aloud data. Then there are self-observational data, where there is analysis by the provider of the verbal report, who, while engaged in strategic behavior, and immediate retrospective data, where the reports of thoughts are after they had occurred, kind of reconstructing what those thoughts were and analyzing them. Notice as I lay out these categories that the literature is fraught with examples of what is termed think aloud, when in fact the data aren't think aloud at all. They are retrospective. Often they're retrospective. They're thinking back and doing some analysis to get at what the mind was engaged in at the time. So that's why we call it self-revelation, to get away from this misuse of think aloud as a term. There were semi-structured interviews within 48 hours after the strategy instruction sessions. And the purpose was to obtain participants' reflections on their strategy use during the sessions in which they had both provided and received strategy instruction.
Okay, so let me present some of the key findings we got from this project. So I will start with the first research question. How did the strategies of the participant as a provider and as recipient compare? In this aspect, we found 3 most commonly used strategies when the participants assumed the role of provider, and they were scaffolding strategies, modeling strategies, and strategies for helping to shape recipients' emotions. We also found 3 most commonly used strategies in the role of recipient. They were strategies for analyzing words and phrases, and strategies for evaluation and inferencing strategies. Interestingly, although providers tended to use different strategies from what strategy they use in the role of recipient, but they were strategies commonly used jointly by both providers and recipients, and they were strategies for collaborative problem solving and strategy sharing, and strategies for leveraging resources. The participants also highlighted 2 main reasons in the follow-up interviews why they both engaged in collaborative efforts. So firstly, providers tended to use collaborative problem-solving strategies for helping recipients finding out their own solutions in the process of problem solving. Secondly, both providers and recipients, they engaged in problem solving together as non-native speakers. This is because they aimed to address language-related issues collaboratively, also facilitated recipients' ability to arrive their own solutions to language-related challenges. So let me move on to the second research question.
Okay, before we leave the first, let me just point out, there's confusion in the literature about teacher strategies and student strategies. And often people kind of assume they're the same. That's why it's so helpful to try this micro level analysis out. And we find, just as my colleague Isobel pointed out, there are similar strategies between someone in the teacher role and in the student role, but then there are a lot of strategies that are different. So it's very important to take a close look at this. Certainly not to assume that the strategy a teacher is using is the one that a student's going to be using. Probably in many cases not. Okay, Isobel, go ahead.
Yeah. So I move on to the second research question. In what ways did individual differences affect strategy choices? By analyzing data, we found that the participants, their strategy choices appear to be highly individualized. A number of factors emerged as influential influencing the participants. Their strategy choices when they acted as both provider and recipient, such as, for example, their linguistic knowledge, their prior knowledge of vocabulary strategies, their previous language learning experience, and also their personal characteristics, such as their personality and their style preferences. Some factors also specifically affected providers' strategy choices. One such factor was their motivation to improve teaching skills in strategy instruction. So the participants, the providers who had a strong desire to become an effective strategy instructor were more likely to play a more active role in guiding and supporting students in the process of fine-tuning vocabulary. Their previous teaching experience and self-efficacy was also closely related, and they both play an important role in influencing their strategy choices. So the participant, what we found is when they had more teaching experience and with a high level self-efficacy, tended to show more flexibility in using, deploying, combining strategies in supporting students in the process of problem solving. And there are also some factors specifically affecting recipients' strategy choices, and they were their own motivation to learn and expand vocabulary knowledge, and their previous language background, and also their individual learning needs.
Okay, so
So,
further. Sorry.
I have another research question. Yeah. So the third research question, that's be very interesting. So what insights did the participants gain by assuming the role of both provider and recipient? We identified some key insights the participant gained by taking part in this research project. And the participants really highlighted in the interviews that, firstly, assuming both roles really enhanced their knowledge of learners, provide very valuable knowledge of learners themselves, especially individual learners' style preferences. So they gained a better understanding how each individual learner responded to strategy instruction in unique ways. And they also recognized the challenges faced by learners. And this awareness also helped them develop their knowledge and strategies of strategies that could specifically address such challenges. Secondly, assuming both roles also enhance their knowledge of strategy instruction, and they have a better understanding of different vocabulary strategies by exploring strategies for fine-tuning vocabulary with their peers together. They also recognize the importance of facilitating self-directed learning through scaffolding. They highlighted saying, oh, that is really gave them opportunity to try and experiment different strategies that could support learner autonomy. But learner autonomy here is really, we're saying it's not really they can do independently, but it's like step by step. So students become more autonomous through scaffolding, and we really hope gradually they could take charge of their learning from time like lifelong perspective. Thirdly, assuming both roles also foster a mutual understanding between providers and also recipients. The participants acknowledge the value of collaborative learning, and they have a deeper understanding how both parties could benefit from participating in the collaborative problem solving and strategy sharing. They also gained a better insights into how social and emotional factors could affect the effectiveness of vocabulary strategy instruction from both perspectives. For example, learner, their engagement, their motivation, and their self-confidence. So those are some of the key findings we got from this project. I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague.
Oh, yeah, further reflections about the study. One is the value of self-revelational, introspective, retrospective, or report data to better understand the learner's actual use of strategies at the micro level. We think it's crucial to collect these kinds of data, and you get, as you saw from you know, what we did present you here, and we have a lot more data we didn't have time to include in this
Yes.
presentation, how complex it is, but how interesting. And there are insights both for the recipient, namely the learner, and there are also good insights for the provider, which we think hasn't been adequately looked at, the side of the provider. So more attention needs to be given to the quality of the report data by coaching learners and reporting their strategy behavior. Way back in the 1980s, when we started using verbal report in applied linguistics more robustly, there was a belief that we shouldn't be coaching learners. This would skew the results, put ideas in their heads. Not really. Bowles and others have demonstrated that coaching can be crucial to get your respondents to provide the kinds of data you want them to provide, and direct their minds to analyze and pay attention to particular kinds of behaviors. It's not putting ideas into their heads as to how what strategies they use, but to look at those kinds of strategies and to report back. Suggestions for promoting self-directed strategy learning, using guided questions or prompts to promote self-reflection about strategy use, involving recipients in scaffolded strategic problem solving. A certain amount of the strategy literature reports on what we could call self-report. That's what a questionnaire is, if it's not task-based, where the learners are expounding on what they tend to do. The problem is those data may not be very reliable and consequently not very valid if they're based on beliefs learners have about what they do. Much better to get them reporting what they've actually done, what they're actually doing, or they've just done. You're getting better reliability and validity. Okay. Then engaging recipients in style stretching beyond their comfort zone. This can be crucial since we tend to like to we're at home in, for example, being concrete sequential and one thing after another. And maybe to learn more effectively and to use a strategy more effectively, we need to be a bit random and intuitive and just go with the flow and not worry about being concrete sequential at that point. Things like that in terms of style preferences. And style stretching may be being more random intuitive. Okay, enhancing recipients' ability to leverage resources when selected strategies fail to produce the desired results. As my colleague Isobel pointed out, we saw this leveraging of resources crucial both to the provider and to the recipient to look at what resources are out there and choose something else if what has been used so far doesn't produce results. Okay, and finally, we have the references which we invite you to access, and you'll notice that the Plonsky talk he gave several years ago, we give you the link so you can go right to his PowerPoint and see what he had to say about the research literature on strategy instruction. So thank you very much for attending the session and for listening to what we had to say. We hope you're enjoying the ILA meeting. We're sorry we were not able to be in Lyon.
I will be in Lyon.
You're going to be sorry.
Yes,
okay.
in person.
Great. I will not be, but we will have one representative. And we look forward, if you'd like to contact us, get some more information, please do so. We have every intention to write papers and publish on this exciting study that we presented today. It's hot off the press. We've just completed and we are looking forward to writing up different aspects of it in the literature. Thank you so much.
Exactly. Thank you very much.